Joining me now, a first-class father, Michael Morelli. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate you. I appreciate being on the show. I'm humbled to be here, and thank you again for being so patient with me.
You got it. It's an honor to have you here. Let's start it like this. How many kids do you have, and how old are they?
Oh, yeah. All right, so I've got a five-year-old boy. His name is Carmelo, and I've got a 7-year-old girl. Her name is Karina Marie.
Wow, very cool. You got them involved in any kind of sports or activities yet, or?
We play basketball outside. I'm fortunate enough to have a tennis court and a basketball hoop out here. And so we play basketball is what we've started with.
Okay, very cool. All right, Mike, if you could, just take a minute, please, to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
Yeah, so gosh, I love to be super vulnerable here, guys. So, for me, I'm going to take you back to 18. I'm going to summarize this, you guys, but I'm going to take you back to about 18 years old when I first tried ecstasy. I tried ecstasy, and that led to cocaine and opioids and alcohol and porn, manipulating women, all the way until I was about 30 years old. So, 12, almost 13 years there, where 4 nights out of the week, I was high on something. And, I realized now that I was running from the pain, and that's how I was masking pain. I was numb to that. And so, some really, really dark days and some dark time. I was, taking Wellbutrin and fluoxetine for depression at one point. There was a time when I couldn't get out of bed without it. If I go back 7 years, and this is just perfect, I was so excited to be here with you today, because if I go back, the pivotal moment for me was learning that I was going to be a father. So back at 31 years old, I grew a business to about $5 million in revenue. We had 30 employees. I personally guaranteed a bunch of mall leases because I had no credit at the time. And I went bankrupt because no one was coming to our stores anymore. So I was going bankrupt. I was going through a divorce with my previous wife. I was addicted to drugs. I mean, it was a dark, dark time. And I had to move back with my mom at 31 years old. So that's really where I'm going to start sharing, is at 31 years old. When people counted me out, I'm 31, I'm back at his mom, people were laughing at me, right? And I remember getting the call, and this was the woman who I'm now with, who I was having an affair on, my ex-wife. She called me and she said, I'm pregnant. And of course, like any guy's reaction, like, you're what? You're what? Like at the time it was like, no, not this on top of all of the shit that was going on at the time. But I realized, right, it was a blessing in disguise. It was sent by God or the universe or whatever you believe in. It was sent down to save me, because that was the pivotal moment. That was the thing that said, Michael, you got to get your shit together so that you're not some deadbeat dad. Like, you're unhealthy. I was, at the time, I was 25% plus body fat. I was 185 pounds when I should have been 150. Now, granted, I put on some muscle now, and I'll share a little bit about that later. But I was overweight. I remember I remember carrying 2 bags of groceries up 2 flights of stairs. I got to the top of it, and I was like winded and out of breath. I mean, it was bad. And so I hated myself in the mirror. I was in a terrible state. And then that was the thing that's like, all right, Michael, it almost came out and like shook the shit out of me. Like, okay, dude, like life is about to start for real now.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Mike, I'm a recovering alcoholic and an addict myself, so I understand what you're talking about with that. And a lot of people ask me too, what was the turning point? And you know what? It didn't even stop for me. Even when I had kids and everything, there was times where I was able to quit for periods of time and keep relapsing and going back. I remember the first time I had, like I said, I have 4 kids, and when my oldest was in pre-K, I remember walking him to the school and dropping him off. And I remember I had morning alcohol in me, and I was trying to avoid being away from the parents so that they couldn't smell me. And I was thinking,
Wow.
and on the walk back to my apartment, I was like, man, I'm going to be doing this for like, in the next 18 years, hiding from everybody. So I had stopped at that point for 3 years right after that moment. So it's things like that that motivate you to quit.
And you know what? And I want to share the last 7 years, because that will really sort of bring some context to what I think we're going to talk about. You and the fact that you were hiding it, you weren't really hiding it. Your son is picking up on those habits through mirror neurons, right? There's something called mirror neurons, and we think our kids aren't watching, but they're watching. And even if they're not watching, they're picking up on those. And so you were downloading that, whether it was subconsciously or consciously, you were downloading that destructive behavior to your child, not even knowing it, because you think right in those moments that you're actually hiding it, but you're not. So kudos to you, man. I know what it's like to beat addiction. It is fierce. It is challenging. Probably the hardest thing I ever did. Cocaine had a hold on me. I loved it. And even if I think about it now, I think about those 10 years or 12 years or whatever it was, and total destruction. I had fun. I learned, and here we are, right? And I love sharing that, because I think through our vulnerability, Alec, this call and what you're doing to bring fathers to the forefront, we're healing through this process, right? It's like when we have these conversations, we're healing more. And I think that's really the important thing. I just want to summarize really quickly for the listeners the last 7 years of my life. So I drew a line in the sand, Alec, after feeling like total dog shit and understanding and learning that I was going to be a father. I drew a line in the sand, and over 113 days through the internet and just sifting through information and piecing it together, I lost about 27 pounds. So I went from 180 and change down to 147, and I saw my abs for the first time in my life. Like, that was the thing. Like, it was like, oh my gosh, I can actually do this, right? And so from that point on, over the period of the next 6 months, I went and I got 6 different certifications in the health and wellness space. 2 of them that I got are actually from Arizona. I actually came to Arizona from, which is why I got a taste of this, which is why I'm here. Fast forward, I start posting on YouTube. My very first video was posted 6.5 years ago. You should see it. It's crazy. It's still on YouTube. It's youtube.com/Morelli Fit. I mean, a 9-minute video for a 3-minute workout. Nerves, crazy. But I posted it and I stayed consistent. And through that consistency, I wrote a best-selling book called The Sweet Potato Diet. We've sold over 300,000 programs in the wellness space collectively, products, programs. We've got 4 brands. We're helping hundreds of thousands of people a year, if not millions, through a lot of just our regular content, not even people who have committed and become clients. So here we are. And now, as a result of this growing, this healing, my kids, I'm able to come on podcasts like this and share the story. And it's unbelievable, man.
Yeah, it's very inspirational, Michael. And you know what it is too? It's almost that case where you say, if I can do it, you can do it. And that's what's so inspiring about it,
100%. And I believe that. Like, I believe that. I'm the poor little depressed boy 7 years ago who didn't think he could, just like a lot of people who don't think they can. And if I can do it, I'm not special. I didn't come down with any superpowers. Like, I just did the work because of something pivotal that happened in my life.
Yeah, well said. And I interview quite a lot of Navy SEALs on my show. And one of the things they always say is you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And trying to get sober is one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever experienced in my life. And another one of those things that make you uncomfortable is becoming a father, because when you become a father for the first time, it places you in all these uncomfortable situations that you never imagined yourself doing. So how did becoming a dad change, obviously with the sobriety and stuff, but how did becoming a father kind of change your perspective on life?
Well, I understood what my parents went through. I think we all do that, right? I mean, my son is a spitting image of me, except smarter than I ever was at 5 years old. I mean, the kid is putting together Legos. He's 5 years old. He's putting together 1,500 piece Legos that are meant for 12-year-olds. Like, the dude is like ridiculous. And so, I mean, just seeing that evolutionary process and understanding that I get to contribute every step of the way, and that he's going to become what I download, in a sense. I mean, our kids spend more time with us than anyone, and we were blessed. My fiance, we were blessed to be able to be there with them. She doesn't work. I shouldn't say she doesn't work. She works a lot. She takes care of the kids when I'm doing this kind of stuff. And even now we're getting ready. They went to a couple of different schools. We tested it out. We always had in the back of our mind that we were going to homeschool. So we're getting ready to pull them out. I'm bringing a teacher in, and we're going to homeschool our kids. And so I think that the biggest thing for me is that they're so moldable, so impressionable, and they download everything. I give you an example of something that we're downloading right now. Every single night we do affirmations. And, it's like 3 or 4 sentences. And here's what I said. I said, I didn't say the first person. I said, when you memorize this, I said, we're going to go on a journey to memorize these affirmations. And we do it as a family before bed every single night. And I said, when you memorize this, Dad's going to give you an allowance of $100. It's going to take us time. Now, my son wants to memorize it in one day. He's like, give it to me. I want to memorize it. I said, bro, I haven't memorized it yet. I said, we will memorize it together. And when we do, I'm going to give you $100 and I'm going to give Korean $100. So that's what we're doing right now as a family.
Yeah, that's incredible, Mike. And, I do similar things with my kids now. And you know what? I believe in affirmations as well, but I think it was Jim Rohn that said affirmations without discipline is the beginning of delusion. So it's always, following it with some action and trying to give my kids that example. And you know what? My kids, they teach me a lot about myself. One of the greatest things about parenting for me is that it reveals so much about who I am, because my 4 kids, they couldn't be more different than one another. So they each teach me a little bit something different about myself. And that's what's fun about the whole experience, really.
I agree. I think they're here, if we allow them to, they'll teach us presence, right? Dad, stop doing what you're doing, man. Dad, be here with me. Don't get out of your phone, man, right? So that's to me, if you are aware of that, they will force you to be present. And I'm telling you, the more present you are in your day, the greater life is, because that's where the real joy is. It's being present, it's being in the moment, and it's being grateful and showing that gratitude so that your kids again can download that, because man, the world is challenging, and social media and pop culture and politics, I mean, pretty soon if you don't download those beliefs, they're distracted and they're going off on tangents, and at that point it's hard to get them back.
Yeah, and that even goes into before, I was one of those guys that tried to change everything else other than myself. Like I wanted to change the world, change this, change that, and I didn't even have a hold on what I was doing in my own life. So I think a lot of people fall victim to that. I certainly did. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is that I know that my oldest is 13 right now, so he's starting high school next year. You said you're homeschooling your kids. One of the things I like to ask a lot of the entrepreneurs that I get on the show is about college. I know you dropped out of college, I believe. And I see so many kids. I drive Uber on the weekends. I listen to their stories about how they're buried in debt. They're majoring in these things like philosophy and marine biology, whatever it may be. And they don't seem to have any plan or goal or focus with the degree. In your opinion, is college necessary to succeed in today's world?
Is college necessary? I was hoping we would go down this rabbit hole. So yeah, I dropped out with 9 credits. I have 9 credits left in a double major in marketing and human resources with a minor in econ. So I did the thing. I cheated more than I probably learned, and I didn't learn a lot. The one class, though, I always say this when I get asked this question. The one class I wish I would have paid attention to in was the Excel, like learning Excel. That would be a skill that I could have found very useful on this entrepreneur journey. So let's talk about school. I think in a nutshell, and I don't think it's wrong for everyone. I think if you have a passion to be a doctor or to go to law school, there's be an engineer, right? I think there are things, right, when we take a look at those sort of goals that school makes sense for. Outside of that, I think it's bullshit. They're not teaching the stuff that we need to be learning for 2020. They're teaching stuff that we needed to learn in 1970 and 80, and it hasn't changed, and that's the problem. And instead of taking a look at the curriculum and changing how we learn, we're putting more teachers in. There's ways to teach people, and I think the first things first is we got to start teaching things that matter.
Yeah, and what's great about the time that we live in now with it, I know that technology has many downsides, that goes without saying, but one of the greatest things about the technology is to be able to follow people online, such as yourself. I mean, other entrepreneurs that are out there, Gary Vee, obviously, so many other guys that I've had on the show, like Ed Milet, Bedros Keuilian, these kind of guys, they put out content, and it's so you can learn so much more from that can make an impact on your life immediately, starting today, rather than sitting in a class and, like you said, learning these things and these tactics that are just outdated and really no benefit to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, they're teaching you to be middle class.